but the Turner report that came out to government a couple of weeks ago, it says that we should electrify our cars. I mean, what a piece of fantastic thinking. I mean, this is what we believe. Electrify all 30 million cars in the UK. You've cut 12% of the UK's CO2 emissions, in one go, and save just an incredible amount of oil. And then you've got Lord Turner in his report to government saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That Turner report came out on Monday, really exciting. Wednesday, nice car went into administration. Yeah. Same week, it's like...
yeah.
Anyway.
That doesn't matter because they have to be winners and losers, don't they?
That is true. Yeah. That is true. And you can't always be the first to marketplace, can you?
And first to market isn't always best.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, it's a bit law of the jungle with stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Law of the jungle.
Well, that's good. It's encouraging to talk to you.
Thank you.
Can I talk about energy?
Yeah.
To have a chat with you about energy, because I'm beginning to think about where my energy is coming from, and I'm doing a bit on that on my vlog at the moment, about powering my G-Whiz. I use Juice. Have been using them for 3 years. It's the renewable kind of, everything you take from the national grid, they guarantee to replace from an offshore wind farm in North Wales. But there are these questions that are going on that people are beginning to ask about, am I really signing up for green energy, brown energy, where that's going and how? Am I running my car renewably by using Juice, do you think?
Yes, I would say. Because npower signed up a bunch of people to the idea that once they built this offshore wind farm, they could have their electricity from it. So that kind of passes the fundamental test that we feel exists in the world, the test of old versus new. So to try and explain that, you have to go back to the mid-90s, just before privatisation, when the UK had about 3% of its electricity from renewables, and we all had that 3% in our mix. You had it, I had it, everybody had it. Then privatisation came along. We came along, we were followed into green tariffs by some of the big six and then all of the big six. And over the next few years, people started to buy the existing green electricity, that 3%, and put it into 100% tariffs and sell it to you or me as 100%. And as a consequence, a few people's greenness went up massively and everybody else's went down completely. And it's what we call robbing Peter to supply Paul. That's our kind of favourite way of expressing it. It's just a rebundling of greenness. You take something that exists in the world and have it for yourself, then you've taken it from somebody else. Their emissions go up so that yours can go down. So our big philosophy is that only new green electricity fights climate change and should be considered green. The stuff that gets built because of your electricity bill, because of your need for electricity, because as a country, we've now got 5% renewable energy. It's nowhere near enough. And it's no good just buying a 100% green tariff and saying, I've done my bit, because it's not enough. We can't all go 100% green overnight. What really matters is the building. So we believe that electricity companies should be ranked according to how much they spend of each customer's bill every year building new sources of green electricity. The only stuff that actually makes a difference to targets and climate change and that kind of stuff. And actually, I'm just looking at this refresh of our website, Which Green, something we've been running for a few years. It's in its 5th year now. We publish a league table of all the electricity companies in the UK. And we're telling people how much of their electricity bill is getting spent on renewable energy, because all the big six have got glossy TV adverts with videos of windmills and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And the extent to which they promote wind energy is inversely proportional to the extent to which they have it. So they're 99% brown, for example, but they're 99% wind energy in the adverts. But this cuts to the heart of the matter. The big six are spending between £5 and £10 out of each customer's bill every year building windmills, and we think that's pathetic, really pathetic. And at the same time, they'll be selling you green tariffs, often at a premium, and failing to meet their minimum government obligations, which currently are to have about 7%, I think, or maybe even 8% now, of renewables in your mix, and to build 1% every year. So long-winded, it's not simple. 100% isn't as good as it looks. That's the kind of summary I would offer you. New is more important than old. In fact, I would say it's not important how much green you've got in your tariff, it's the rate of change that matters.
The rate at which they're converting to green?
Yes, the rate of change, the rate at which it's being built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that differs across all the big six?
They're all spending between £5 and £10.
And so me as a consumer, going off and buying my energy from what I think is a renewable source, I don't pay a premium for it with Juice.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But other people are.
Yeah, they are.
They're not necessarily they're paying a premium for what is effectively brown power.
Effectively brown power?
Well, effectively they're not getting renewable every time when they think they're signing up for it. They're getting.
You don't get the electrons from your supplier. That's a kind of, the laws of physics say that. But the electricity industry is a kind of it's almost bipolar in that respect. You've got two worlds. You've got the physical world, where you put electricity in and customers take it out, but it's never the same electron. And then you've got the kind of accounting world, whereas provided all the meters tally and you do the balancing by the half an hour, you are considered to have supplied electricity to your customer. It's a pragmatic world, really.
This is a really big deal, though, in the world of electric cars, because the argument goes around and around in circles. The people are saying you buy and drive an electric car. It's coming out of a brown power source anyway. So what's the deal? If you're running a car on renewable energy, it's massively efficient. So it's important that we know that what we're getting is efficient for especially if EVs are going to be implemented on a major scale in the future.
Thing is, even if you run an electric car on the grid, you're making a massive saving in terms of pollution and efficiency, fuel efficiency. Because big power stations have a fuel efficiency of about 50%. And you get a few percent losses in the grid, but not much. Internal combustion engines in cars, they're running typically around about 15% fuel efficiency. There's a massive difference. And so you switch the oil load, the fossil fuel load, from the car engine to the power station, you gain massively anyway, whether it's renewables or not.
It's a good enough answer. Okay. What about this loss of BP and Shell, and what's going on here with wind energy here? I mean, how are your feelings for wind energy generally? There was a big statement last night about Brussels and upping our 40% for renewables by 2020 and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that came out in the news this morning. So,
great stuff.
Are you sceptical?
About what?
Generally, about BP and Shell have pulled out of wind. Generally in this country,
sure,
and now investing in North America.
Yeah,
everyone is saying we're going to up our obligations for renewable power by 40% by 2020. That's what we have to do. Are you feeling confident about the future for your business and how it's growing?
Yeah, I don't think of it as a business. I don't care about it as a business. I just care about the change that we can bring. And what we're confident in is that we're going to keep building windmills and converting customers to green energy and kind of building this kind of momentum. Companies like BP and Shell, they're only ever in wind energy for money. So they pulled out of offshore first because it became clear the government weren't going to pile in with all the money that they hoped for. So they had to pull out. We've been saying for years offshore's not economic, what's going on, there's a load of crap being talked about it. And now they're pulling out of Britain because they can make more money somewhere else. And I think, it's a classic example of how the capitalist model, if you like, of business fails society, because these guys are taking money out of British pockets and investing it in assets in North America. What matters to us, guys, is where we'll get our energy from in the future. I mean, and the power companies are doing the same. It's not just the oil companies. They're all saying the same thing. We can make more money somewhere else in the world. Most of our big six are owned by French, German, and Spanish companies. We pay our electricity bills to these people. They take that money and they're building windmills somewhere else in the world. They need to be building them here because we need energy independence in the UK. We need to have our energy from a source that's within our own control, from our own indigenous power sources such as the wind. Isn't it a very important thing that we do this in the next 10 or 20 years? And the system fails us because of this concept of globalization and the freedom of capital to roam the world, stalking the best returns. This is what these guys are doing. They're leaving us here, in relative poverty in terms of investment in infrastructure. It fails. And this is why I think the government should intervene in the energy industry in the same way that they have in the banking industry and say, look, this is failing us. We can see there's a problem coming. The market can't cope because it's interested in itself, basically, its own short-term returns. Government should become a generator again. That's what we think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or get tougher with the big six.
Yeah.
Say we're just not having this.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do more than you're currently doing, and it's just not good enough for them to be always telling the government, we're going to go and build in North America if we can't make enough money in Britain.
Does this mean that Miliband's good news? Do you think he's going to start doing that? They're making claims that he's going to start.
I think it means.
getting bossy with them.
I tell you what I think. I think the whole recession is good news because it's kind of turned the world slightly on its head. So you've got the Labour government now. Probably for the first time in a generation, there's the clearest gap between them and the Tories, and they're quite prepared to talk about and do government intervention in markets and business and that kind of stuff. You see it in banking, we'll see it in other places too, and that's a real transformation of the landscape. And I think that means we will see things from Miliband and some of the other kind of young guns, and stuff that we could have only hoped for, dreamed of, 6 months ago. But hands-on government intervention in the big issues of the day, fighting climate change, securing energy for the future for Britain, and sorting out where markets fail.
Yeah.
That's what I hope.
That drilling.
Yeah, it's a pain in the arse, isn't it?
I
don't know where it is actually. Don't know where it is.
Oh, okay.
Is it ruining it?
No, not really. I can perfectly hear you perfectly well. It's just a pain in the arse, like you say. Don't worry. Okay. What about, that whole thing about the recession, isn't it? Don't we have worries that actually all this money that people were talking big about and investing in renewables is suddenly going to be withdrawn? It's going to come down to the cold fact of markets and brown power is cheap and green power is expensive for governments and everyone else. Do you think that's going to be a problem from the recession?
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag, the recession. So, because demand has dropped off for raw materials, then brown power is getting cheaper. That does make green power harder. That's a kind of, it's a swings and roundabout situation. That's one of the swings. And it will be harder to find money. But conversely, investing in renewable infrastructure is kind of one of the safest places to put money. And there's no loss of appetite for that kind of investment. They're assets, long-term assets, and it's not like some dodgy financial kind of instrument or something, which everybody's been burned by. But there is less money in the world, it seems, even for renewables. We're starting to hear that now.
Yeah.
It's almost as if the money that was being lent was going around in this great big whirlwind, and it never really existed in the world. Everyone was promising everybody else something, and the minute somebody broke a promise, nobody had the money. And when you look at the big six, the big four banks, I think HBOS were the worst. They had lent 175% of their depositor base. For every pound they had from a saver, they lent £1.75. I mean, how can they do that? That's
unbelievable, isn't it?
Staggers me.
It's just not really sustainable, is it?
No, I don't think so. So maybe all this money that was in the world wasn't really in the world.
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we need to print some more.
Yes. Okay. What about wave and solar and all that kind of stuff? Is that something you're investigating or will plan to do?
Yeah, we keep an eye on it. We talk to wave and tidal companies all the time. People with ideas. It's all R&D stage stuff. We've got some ideas of our own. I think it's a number of years away from being cost competitive. It's technically feasible, but it's a matter of getting it for the right price. And solar is massively expensive in the UK, so it's not going to have a big impact on our targets. But wave and tidal, I think they could. I think they could compete with offshore wind, that is. Give them a few more years, perhaps. But it's a tough environment out there in the sea, whether you're above it or under it. It's tough,
Yeah.
And we've got this massive resource on land for wind. There's enough wind to power the whole country 3 or 4 times over. One of our big points has always been, why are we dashing offshore where it's very hard and very expensive when we've got all this land to use? And I know why. I know the answers. We've been driven there by NIMBYs that made planning so difficult for the big six that they all got behind offshore, lobbied the government, convinced them it was the best thing since sliced bread, and the government have now painted themselves in a corner and said, look, we're going to have this 40% target and we're going to hit most of it from offshore wind, and without really understanding the economics of it. We'll see what happens, but round 1 and round 2 offshore wind projects have been underperforming significantly on their promises. They're supposed to be 30% more productive than onshore turbines. They cost twice as much to build, mind you, but they're not. They're producing load factors equivalent or less than onshore wind turbines. So it's all a bit hyped up and not delivering at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. What about the output on these turbines? Because I've been reading about mega turbines with mega blades that produce 10, gigawatts or whatever it is. I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah.
Have we got any of those, or are you planning are you planning to be able to use this like 100-meter blade span? And all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
totally. Our biggest turbine right now is got an 82-meter blade span, and I think it stands on an 85-meter tower, something like that. It's got a 2 megawatt rated capacity. That's its peak output, and in a year it's producing probably 5 gigawatt hours, which is a number with a lot of noughts on the end.
So that one turbine, how many homes would you say that can power?
That's a better way to put it. I was just thinking about that. That one would be about 1,500.
That's pretty good, isn't
Yeah.
it? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you think there's the capacity then to electrify, in terms of transport, the nation, and power it by wind?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we crunched the numbers. We drive 250 billion miles a year here in the UK and 30 million cars, and it's a shed load of oil. But if you switch it to electricity, because of the greater efficiency of the grid and electric motors and all that kind of stuff, you just need a 12% increase in grid-delivered electricity, just 12%, which is staggering to most people. Most of us think, it's got to be more than the grid. The power that we use in our cars must be more than the power that comes through the grid, but it isn't. It would be 12%. And that would take 10,000 windmills. Just 10,000 windmills, I say just.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, 10,000 windmills for 30 million cars and 250 billion miles a year of driving, zero emission and endless, sustainable.
Wow. And what about this thing about peaks though, on the in terms of demand and so on? I mean, you're charging cars overnight.
That's the
Do you
beauty
have
of
a
it.
smart grid or?
No, but the beauty of it is it would improve the load factor of our current grid. This is the utilization of the grid, because we all want electricity at the same time. The grid tends to peak up here and trough down here, and you've got your winter tea time up here and you've got your weekend summertime down here or something. And there are thousands of megawatts of capacity stood around waiting to hit the peak and then turned off when we hit the trough. EVs would mostly be charged overnight and in other off-peaks, and so it would increase the volume of use on the grid and the off-peaks, which means we wouldn't need a bigger grid. We could just use the grid we've got better, more effectively. So it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, that is a perfect fit. I read somewhere, I don't know whether it's true, but that there's enough seepage coming off the electric grid to power every single car electrically in the States overnight.
They must have a crap
What
grid.
they're using.
They must have a crap grid, because over here it would take 12%. We know the numbers,
Yeah.
so it's got to be similar over there. If they've got 12% losses on the grid, then that's not very good.
Yeah.
Not very good. But you can't do much about a certain amount of losses on the grid.
Yeah.
A few percent, you're gonna have it.
But I mean, people are talking about some interesting technologies, aren't they? Where your fridge can turn off when it needs to, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Intelligent demand.
Intelligent
Is how I like to think of it, and I think
Yeah.
that has to come, because our current model has been based on the abundance and cheapness of fossil fuels, and a centralised model where we have these huge power stations feeding a huge grid, and it's a top-down approach, and we just flick switches and it comes. That's what we expect. That's the current model, and it's only current because of the factors that allowed us to have it. In the future, it would be different. There will be intelligent demand. We won't necessarily have energy on demand all the time, and I think it would be decentralised. It will come from renewables, and we'll have a much more interactive grid. You can see EVs, people talk about it, giving back to the grid as well as taking from the grid.
Yeah.
Imagine 30 million mobile batteries, giving and taking from the grid. That would be fundamentally different to the way it works right now.
Well, the logic's there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It just takes people like you to go out and do it and show people that it can be done. I'm glad you're doing it.
Thanks.
No,
I'm glad. I'm
that's
having a lot of
fine.
fun, actually.
Yeah, I bet you
Yeah.
are. I bet you are. It's brilliant. Good on you.
Cheers.
Your blog's doing well for you as well, isn't it? It seems to be very popular. People like to have a dialogue with you. And
Yep.
they've got access to you, and that's a
Yep.
really good way to communicate with people. Are you enjoying it?
Oh, massively, yeah, massively. And it's really helped my thinking as well, because I post an idea,
Yeah.
and then people say, yeah, but, and then, some of it is actually steering the thought process. Like, for example, the first electric garage, was this internet cafe thing. A few people said a few things. I thought about it a little bit more and thought, no, actually, and then the thinking went on. So I'm really enjoying the interaction with the people out there that have got other experience and knowledge, and it's like a community of like-minded people.
The sharing of information over the web is just an amazing thing, isn't it? And I'm
Just-
sure that a lot can be done for this new future with the web, and that's the way to communicate it.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant for breaking down barriers like
Yeah,
that.
and ideas, just sharing ideas is just phenomenal.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
it's brilliant for that. So I'm glad you're getting something out of that, and it's a good blog. I enjoy reading it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it's good. Well, Dale, thank you. That's
Yeah,
it.
welcome.
Really good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
thanks.